Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Are you considering hiring a team of experts offshore? So we all know that this option can give you a lot more bang for your buck, but does it really? The communication challenges, cultural differences, and time variations may prove too much for some entrepreneurs. So it's important to consider this as an option only when your organization has the tools and structure to support a successful communication of expectations. When aligned with company values, these hires can bring the added diversity that is needed to fuel innovation. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and business leaders win the right hires. We do so by sharing insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry experts like our guest today, Mr. Eris Verne. He is the founder of Alfinder.
Hey, yes. How are you?
It's Alfinder?
Yes, it's Alfinder.
Alfinder. All right. Eris started programming at 14. While in college, he started an algorithm-based company which solved the problem of internet filtering called APKN. The company was acquired 2 years later. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then after the exit of APKN, Eris discovered a flaw within the multidisciplinary field which intersects marketing, data, and behavioral analysis. So he founded Alfinder to be the most flexible behavioral data analysis solution, enabling industry leaders to predict market behaviors and learn audiences. He currently leads a team of 11 talented offshore employees who have been extraordinary since day one. So he's here to share his story on how he has been able to do this, which is what makes Eris the perfect expert for today's topic. Eris, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to discuss why and when to hire offshore talent,
Right.
and then how to effectively acquire the right teams for your company.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So what's the challenge today that most companies are finding? I'm finding that a lot of organizations have this challenge where they want to save money, so they hire offshore,
Right.
and they don't have the structure in place to actually do it effectively.
Exactly. Well, one of the biggest challenges that we face today is that most founders are not technical founders. That does not mean that your idea is not good or can't be proven. It's just that you're not maybe a technical founder with that background. So you're going to face a lot of challenges, whether hiring onshore, offshore, doing contract-based work, and also the cost, the commitments, the legal issues, and all that just tie into you. Most of the time, forget about your idea and not pursue it, because you feel you're going to hit a wall since you're not able to prove the idea or create the software or solution that you're going after.
Sure. So that brings up a really good point. There's a lot of non-technical founders who have this great idea
Exactly.
for like an app or something
Right.
they want to build, right?
Right.
And I meet one of them at probably every networking meeting. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to-
Exactly.
which look, it's all great that you want to develop something, but like if you don't have the technical chops, don't hire offshore.
Exactly. That's right. Well, even to some degrees, even if you're personally not a technical founder, even hiring onshore is going to be a huge challenge for you. Even from recruiters, talking to them or doing your own research and stuff. Since you're not able to determine the value and qualities of the candidates, it's going to be a challenge. More often than not, it's going to lead to failure. So it's better to have a technical person or a founder or a co-founder on your team, or even an advisor would be enough for them to help you on the hiring process, and then you can take it from there.
All right, so this is really a message for technical founders, really, like how you can do it effectively.
Yes.
So if you're not a technical founder, but let's say you're building a marketing organization and you're a strong marketer, right? you can still do it
Absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. And this is where the role of co-founders come in. You don't have to be an expert when a new idea comes to mind, and then you do actually go after co-founders and build a team. They were not built for this idea for sure, but they have the capabilities and the backgrounds in their field that could definitely help you with your own idea.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so bring on a co-founder if you're not that
Yeah,
technical expert.
that would be the best option.
Okay, so why is this important to a company that you look at the option of hiring offshore? Why was it important to you?
Well, one of the biggest advantages of hiring offshore is cost effectiveness. You do get a lot done with so much less money. So it's more efficient in many ways. The process, you're not going to face any issues in terms of time or anything else. So it all comes down to numbers, and it's going to save you a lot of money. Another aspect is the commitments, and again, the legal issues, the hiring process, and so on. The hiring, the firing, the rates, the all the packages, options. In general, in terms of your accounting, is going to be way simpler just to handle an offshore team rather than having everybody onshore.
Yeah, and if you're handling an offshore team, I would imagine you're writing one check every month. And
Exactly.
That's pretty much it, right?
And this is also brings us to another point, that it's best for you to go after an agency to find the offshore team, not hiring like individuals, simply because it's really difficult for you to find 3 separate like small teams or individuals that are even good at what they do, but it would be really difficult for you to connect them.
Sure. So even when you go forward and you're trying to find an agency, though, right?
Mhm.
It's still somewhat of a transactional process where essentially you have work that needs to get done. You're going to pay X amount, and it's really about getting those deliverables on time.
Right. So let's face it, even the agency, if they are focusing on development aspects, like the agency is specifically in technical and like coding development and stuff, they are still selling a product to you, right?
Sure.
The process, whatever they're offering to you. So again, getting back to the previous point, having a co-founder, having a technical person on your team would greatly help for you just to balance the quality of the agency, just to see if that agency is a right fit for you.
So it's important that you have some sort of cadence on a
Right,
daily basis that you
exactly.
set up.
Yes.
Now, is this something that the agency usually drives, or they let you drive this?
Well, it's up to you. Normally, they want you to give the chance to them, but I think it depends on how far you're into your development process, into your journey of building the software, mostly, or the app, or the idea that you have. But for the beginning, you could let them take that.
Got it. All right, you're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard. And for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. Hey, check out stridesearch.com. There you'll find a link to order Healing Career Wounds, which is available now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all your favorite books buying places.
Store.
Your favorite bookstore.
Right.
I don't know why I'm having trouble finding the word stores. All right, let it be your secret weapon to landing great hires. Our guest today is Eris Verne. He is the founder of OwlFinder, and we're talking to him a little bit about hiring offshore and why, how to be successful at it. So we've talked about why it's important. Let's talk about how to do it successfully, because I think a lot of people have failed at this miserably,
Right.
including myself. I've actually hired offshore, and I've hired individuals, and it has not worked out very well.
Okay.
So you're
let's get through that and see how we can fix that.
Yeah, let's fix that.
All right.
So you said stop hiring individuals. I got the slap on the hand already.
Right. Okay. First thing first, I do suggest that you go through the process from an agency. So do not hire individuals. That diminishes your opportunities to scale. It would be very difficult for you to connect individuals all around the world. Let's say, even if they are in the same region, it's impossible. Even right now that we're doing remote work, the agency gives you the advantage of everybody is on the same team. right? They might not be working from the same location, but they are on the same team. So the agency does some checks on their employees, which are your employees. So the team is established. It's not separate individuals.
So you want to find them that are all working for one agency. So like, okay, how do I find an agency?
Right. So you could do Google searches. They are very popular.
Sure.
They reach
But I'm
out.
also going to find a million different, like, how do I determine which one's going to be the right agency for me?
Well, you just have to ask the right questions based
Okay.
on your needs. So based on this, if you're developing an app, there are agencies that only focus on apps. If you're building a custom software for commercial, let's say, or for machinery, or again, with like data analysis, there are agencies that focus on that specific aspect of development.
What if I'm looking for marketing help or like a virtual assistant team?
Right.
Or,
Well, to be specific, there are agencies that do a lot of things. They have different departments, but for development aspect, I find it. I think doing development offshore, even like before, like COVID, pre-COVID era, a lot of teams in the US, they were doing like not offshore but remote work. So that's just taking it another step further away. In terms of marketing and stuff, again, if you are a professional in your field, it would be very easy for you to find the agency and the people.
got it. Okay. So first step is what?
Okay, find the agency and then see if they are aligned with your needs.
Okay.
Right. Again, whether you're developing an app or a custom software or data analysis solution, they have to be proficient. Their candidates, their team, their establishment should have worked in that area before. They should have some experience, some resume in that development area, and then it would give you an upper hand because they have done it before.
Got it.
Right. And then the best thing for you to do is to see how the agency is technically a recruiting company, right? They have some softwares in order to track their candidates, but they provide the candidates to you, you interview them, and then you hire them. So they are your employees, but then you also have the agency in terms of monitoring and then keeping the team in check because you're not there physically, but they are.
Okay. So the first step, let me go back, was determine what you need. Second
Right.
one is identify an agency.
Right.
Right. Okay. So in determining what you need, you being a technical founder, you had a pretty good layout of exactly what you needed.
Right.
Right. So for you to build your software, what ideally what do you need typically right off the bat?
Well, let me answer this from a perspective of not being a technical founder.
Okay.
And if you don't even have a, let's say, technical co-founder, right?
Yeah.
You have to focus on the product from the consumer's perspective. You have to see what features you want on the app. Very, very low level. You want to see how you want it to look, what problem you want to solve, and all of that. Now, when you do become a technical co-founder or you're a technical founder your own, then you look at details. You maybe want the development stack to be developed with a specific micro-managing like software or specific different servers, databases, different stacks and stuff. So you do have the power to monitor those things and tell them this is how I want it to be built. But if not, you should not worry about it. You should just worry about the features and the outcome.
Got it. Okay. And you probably need somebody from a marketing perspective or UI UX perspective, or is that something you're hiring as well?
Well, you do need those, but I wouldn't suggest, at least for the beginning, to go offshore with that. Let's find somebody onshore that they can give you suggestions. You don't have to hire them. Maybe an advisor would be more than enough, or a small co-founder who can lead you in the right direction.
Got it.
Right.
So your co-founders or the people you bring on should be your key people.
Absolutely.
Who are actually managing this team.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That's a great point. I think a lot of us forget it, right?
Right.
All right. So you've identified an agency. We just kind of went through that. What are the pitfalls of dealing with the agency?
So I mentioned this before. They do normally offer or like brag about their software in terms of they give you a dashboard that you can track your team, but I think you still have to ask a lot of questions. Doesn't matter if you're a technical co-founder or not. You're at the end of the day, you're just hiring some people, right?
Yeah.
So you have to ask, how do I monitor them if they're off work, if they're on work? How do I monitor their progress, their productivity, and all the measures that go into a simple person working? It doesn't have to be technical or like coding specific. Any type of work has some measure in terms of productivity that you could gauge, right? You could understand if somebody's working enough or they're just skipping hours, they're just saying they're working. I think it's easy to monitor, but it's best for you to maybe get a demo or ask specific questions from the agency to see how you would, at the end, after you hire them, be able to like monitor them.
But what systems do I need to have in place as a founder before I actually hire them? So I need to have my project management pretty tight, and I need to have communication tools in place.
Right. Exactly. Well, besides that, that's the whole point of you going offshore. You don't want to get into more hassles or get your work hectic. You want to let that off to another team offshore, preferably, so you have more time focusing on the business aspect or financials or other things that your business has.
Got it. All right. So let's talk about the third point, which is interviewing and hiring. So let's talk about the interview process itself. What have you found have been challenges or challenging in that initial interview process?
Well, couple of points. First off, I think founders should not, or the technical aspect, the co-founders should not get intimidated because they are an offshore team. This happens a lot, and I've had these problems before. So you think because they're offshore, they're like different, but they're not. They're just specifically like in technically like coding and stuff. They are the same as somebody onshore. They're just in another location. You're reaching out to them because of other aspects, because of financials, not because you want something to be done faster or you think it's going to be done easier or faster.
Well, you're just treating them like another remote worker.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, the challenge arises that I've seen like co-founders, technical people hire or go after the interviews thinking it's different than going in an interview locally. But there are pro and cons. There are things to the right side and the left side. So first off, I think you should set the bar in terms of your expectations, in terms of the questions that you want to ask. Just set the interview environment as you would do normally, right?
Sure.
You shouldn't do something.
No, you should hold a high bar, especially in the beginning. This is so critical. So you should not hire just because somebody has 8 years of this or 4 years.
Absolutely. And this is despite, regardless of where you're hiring, right, or who you're hiring. That's just keep your norms in place and do however you would do it normally. Now, the second aspect is that ask technical questions rather than cultural questions. I know this is somewhat opposite of what we preach in the States, especially in the States, right? Yeah. We think culture is important, and it is. If you're building a team internally, you're almost living with them on a daily basis. You're communicating, you're demanding work, they're asking questions, they have needs, right? The interactions are so much that you have to focus on the cultural aspects as well. You have to know if they are fit for your culture and environment that you want to set up. But when they're offshore, that aspect, that dimension almost doesn't exist, and you should not focus on it. That's just spending time where it's not needed.
But it does exist, because they're going to have to communicate with you. They're going to have to interact with people, so that there is some piece of that cultural aspect that still needs to be in play.
That could be regulated, but in terms of you determining a proficiency of a candidate based on their cultural, intricacies, I think it's not a good hiring habit for an offshore team.
Well, I think it's really important that you dig down, though, deep on what the person's accomplished, at least.
Yeah. So this is another point, a specific point, that you have to ask as much technical questions as possible. You have to bring on your technical co-founder or an advisor or whoever you have to ask technical questions. Based on the results of the technical questions, then you could determine, you also have the resume, then you could determine who this person really is, right?
Well, also looking at the impact of the projects that they've worked on. So what
Absolutely.
specifically, and that you don't need to be technical to ask somebody like, walk me through the project.
Exactly.
And what specifically did you do? Tell me the steps on how you got to the end result.
Exactly.
You know, and I will tell you, you will find really quickly that some people will try to bullshit their way through that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's easy to pick out when they can't tell you exactly how they did things.
That mostly happens just looking at resumes, right? And that's why you ask questions off top of somebody's resume, right?
Sure.
So to find out what was it that exactly they do, because they're putting bullet points, but you do want to see how they did it and why they did it, right? You want to find the purpose, and that gives you a good idea of if the person was or is actually qualified for the job.
So if one of your corporate values, though, is that collaboration is a huge piece of the business, right? And that's a corporate value. So why would you not want to identify whether or not somebody's going to be collaborative in that interview process?
Well, you would.
Okay.
So the thing is, asking technical questions has other behavioral aspects to it attached, right? You
Sure.
couldn't understand if somebody is talkative or if somebody is a liar or somebody, like you could understand those things, and you do not have to be a technical like founder to just understand simple human interactions, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right.
For example, and big tip-offs are like, well, we did this, we did that.
Exactly. So,
well, what did you do specifically, right? It's really important that you drill down into those.
So these are regardless of you're doing like a technical hire or just a normal like even hiring like an HR team, that there's no technical like coding stuff involved. So those things aside, one thing that I do want to mention is language barrier. This is huge. I think if you find a perfect candidate for your position that they have language barrier, that you should move on. You should not like hire them.
That's a really good point, because
right. That also falls back into the previous point that you mentioned, right? Communication and stuff. I think just because the person is qualified technically does not make them qualified for the job.
Well, or to represent your organization. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to convey that information.
Exactly. They also have to communicate with other team members, and it's going to become a challenge just to work with.
That's very true.
Right.
All right. So then, you've identified somebody. How are you going about the hire? It's pretty much, hey, this is our budget. Is this person willing to take the job?
Exactly.
It's
so you lay out what you need. You talk to them like normally you're hiring somebody, and then see if they're a good fit or not. Then you either hire them or not.
Now, are you setting 90-day performance metrics for each
these
person?
All depends on, yes, you absolutely could.
You should.
Yes, you absolutely should. Most of the time the agencies do offer these things. They handle these aspects for you. You also it's a benefit for you going through an agency again and not hiring individuals. You get these perks. Let's say the agency tries to take care of you, so you don't have to worry about these things.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I think it's your responsibility to make sure that you have the benchmarks in place for what is this person going to accomplish in the first week.
Exactly. This goes back to the monitoring aspect, right?
Yeah.
So you see how they're going to say you have a dashboard to see how you monitor, but you have to see how are they going to measure it, right? How do you measure productivity as an agency for my employee, right? Because I'm not there. I don't have this software in place. I can monitor them every day. I want to see how do you monitor the productivity and report to me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that means taking the time to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Understand, like, how am I going to know in 30 days whether or not this person is a successful hire? Right?
Exactly. Well, the goal is to not go into a hire and then fall back into because I have a 90-day like period or 30 days, I can just simply fire them. Of course you could, but you're going to waste a lot of time. It's best to go through the interview process in great details, and then if something falls out of place or goes wrong, then you do have the option of finding another candidate.
Yeah, I get that, but that's costly. You don't want to have
You
to get
don't
back.
you
want to
don't
avoid
aim
that at
for
all
yeah
costs.
you want to avoid that. Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's why I think having those performance metrics in place so that everybody understands expectations.
Exactly.
And again, this is more for the entrepreneurs and the hiring managers, because we don't do that. We don't sit down and go,
No.
Here's how I know in 2 weeks this person's successful.
Right. So you could set goals, even if you're not a technical founder. Be like, I want this done. I want this aspect of the project done by this time. Nothing unreasonable. Again, you could talk to other technical people just to get an idea or do some research. I'm sure, like even Googling these things could give you a good idea of how long a project could take. Right?
Exactly. All right. So that's the interview and the hire. What's the fourth piece?
Okay, the last section is when you do want to hire them, right? So or after you hire them, and then now they're getting started to work for you. You're communicating often at the beginning, I'm guessing, just for you to get to know them, right? You hire them; they're not on contract. I think.
Well, they are technically on contract. They're your employees, but they work for somebody else. So it is a contract employee.
Right, but it's not a contract in terms of they're not working on specific like sub projects of your whole
you're
software.
They're working on your project
Mhm.
for a determined amount of time. They're still really a contractor.
So the thing is, there's not a limit after you hire them in terms of time. So they're your hires until you fire them.
Okay.
Or they quit, right? So
you don't need them anymore.
Yeah. Which you would fire them, right? So technically they are an employee of yours, but they are somewhere else, legally binding. They are through an agency, so everything's good, right?
Got it.
You don't have a problem in terms of, I don't know, like taxes and stuff in the States. Now, one of the suggestions that I have for non and technical founders going after offshore teams after you hire them, I think you have to eliminate or at least limit the amount of internal news that you share with them. Because of the cultural differences, they might not get it simply, or they might not know what to do with it.
So what do you mean? Like if you're a transparent organization and you share
you're
financial
transparent,
data or something
yes,
like that?
but you shouldn't share details as you would do internally, right? If you have an internal team, if you specifically, like if you're a startup of maybe 150 people or less, then everything, and you're a transparent startup, then you can't really hide anything, right? But with an offshore team, there's a bridge in communication which you could cross or you could not, right? And I think,
does it cause problems if you share too much data?
Well, I think in terms of causing problems, yes. At the end, maybe nothing major, but the fact that they cannot comply or understand maybe the meanings of those news, whether it's an achievement or a loss, they can't have sympathy with you or the company that you have. So it's more of a distraction to them rather than something that could be helpful.
So what is the information you don't want to share with them?
I think if you're a startup going through huge rounds of funding or gaining a huge section of the market, any achievement, any big losses, you should avoid or should limit telling them. They're going to find out, well, you're the founder or you're the project manager handling the team. You do reflect what's going on in the company, right? But I think you should be more focused on the job that they're doing rather than communicating as they were an onshore team.
But I would think that they would be proud of the fact, and maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know, but I would think that they would be proud of the fact that, hey, look at the company just got a huge round of funding. Now we brought on a bunch of customers, and I was part of building that.
That's a very good point. For short term, yes, but long term, this has been my experience. After a certain amount of time, the person knows they are not going to have a long future with you, and this is going to affect their mentality, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Right. So after a certain amount of time, you're not going to, like, also if you are growing fast, you are going to at least put more focus on an onshore team, right? It's not that you're going to eliminate your offshore team, but you're going to at least have a 50-50 team or a hybrid team and an offshore team, onshore team.
Sure.
You're going to find a balance. The main reason that you go after hiring an offshore team is because you don't want to handle or the costs, the tax stuff, the commitments, and all. But if you're growing, then I'm sure you don't have that much problem with that.
All right, shoot, we're getting pretty close on time.
All right.
Eris, what would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience they can plug into their business today?
First thing first, I think you should hire fast and fire faster. Do not feel limited in terms of if the person is not working good, they're not complying with your needs, they can't work with your standards, whether they're high or low, then you have to move on. And the agency is there to help you with this process. They can help you change a team member or fire them simply, and you don't have to worry about anything afterwards, right? It's easy to do. Another thing is that try to focus on the features, especially if you're not a technical founder or if you don't have that much experience, right? Even technical founders, we don't know, being a technical founder myself, we don't know how the market is going to react. So it's best to focus on the software, on the outcome, rather than the people who are building it. You have a project manager in place that they're handling the team. Now you just see the result. This is the app. Now you see if this is a good app. You don't have to think, oh, who's behind it or why didn't they do this? You'd be like, okay, this is not a feature that I want, or it's not working properly.
Got it.
Right?
Shoot, Eris, thanks so much for your time investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of our audience can reach you?
You can contact me through LinkedIn. My email is also there. Feel free to send me a message or send me an email. I'll be quick to respond.
And how do they find your company?
Alfinder, alfinder.com.
Perfect. All right. I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Girard. If you're listening to the podcast, please review, share, and like. After all, this show's for you. So feel free to send us all the feedback so we can make it better as well. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@stridesearch.com. Tune in next Tuesday. Our guest is going to be Behrooz Sheath. He is the co-founder and CEO of Gupshup. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to recruitment success, Rick Girard.